I'm Kirsty. I'm one of the tutors here at MediPro, and this video is to explain some of the documentation that our student AAPs are using whilst out on placement with you. So, first of all, they are enrolled with MediPro to do the qualification, although they are employed with East of England as apprentice EMTs. And that's the reason why their documentation might look different to the documentation that other AAPs in the East of England are using, and it's because they are directly enrolled with East of England. Now, although it's exactly the same qualification that both groups are doing, it's up to the training providers themselves to make their own documents and create their own plan on how they intend to evidence the outcomes in the qualification. So for that reason, ours looks different from East. If you went to another service, theirs probably would look different, and then if you go somewhere else, theirs would look different too. But ultimately, we're all achieving the same evidence towards the same qualification specification. If you want to see what the qualification spec is, it's on FutureQual's website, and you just look under AAP qualification spec, and it's there to download as a PDF. So, the students themselves, they have three parts of making evidence for this qualification. The first part is an e-portfolio. Now, the student will be doing that in the background by themselves and is probably really stressed out about it, but they don't really need your help with that one. The parts that they do need your help is the PAD document and the professional discussion document that we have. So, the PAD document is the one that looks like this. This is a book that they are supposed to get signed off in practice while they're with you. Now, you don't have to be a mentor to sign the book. All you have to do is be professionally qualified. So if you're a technician or a paramedic or a nurse or a doctor, then you are able to sign this book for the students. You don't need any particular assessing qualification or anything. So this is the PAD document. Now, the point of it is within the qualification there are certain learning outcomes that say the student must be able to or the student can demonstrate, and the easiest way to create evidence for those particular outcomes is if somebody such as yourself is prepared to testify to say, I saw the student do that, and then you write down that you saw them, and we can take that as evidence that that actually occurred because you're a professional person. So I'll show you around the book too. Firstly, if you go to this page here, this is the mentor sample page. So the first time that you work with any of our AAP students, if you could go to this page, write your name, do a sample signature, write your clinical grade and write what base station you're at. Now, the point of this is it's all to do with quality and checks and vetting and stuff. So we need to see a sample signature to look through the book to make sure that, things aren't getting forged and things like that. We also might contact you sometime in the future when we are quality checking the portfolios to verify that, you say, I did work with a student, yes, I did sign these things too. And we will also contact East of England at the end to get proof of your qualifications, and that's why you need to know where your base station is too. You only have to do this once, so do that the first time you meet the student and then you don't have to do it again. We only need your signature once on that one. The one that's next to it though is the shift hours log, and this one, if you could sign it at the end of every shift you've done with the student. So it's literally write your name, what date it was, and then how many hours was in the shift. And it's because the student needs to do a minimum of 750 hours, and this is their way of keeping a log of how many hours they've done and where they've done it. So if you could sign that at the end of every shift, that would be great. The rest of the book is a huge set of learning outcomes, and these are the ones that the student has to demonstrate in real life, these learning outcomes. So the point here is is that if you see a student do one of these things, then the student should ask you if you would be willing to sign to testify that you saw them do that. Now, some of them is simple as this one here, 3.7, is take and record a patient's history. So if you're working with the student and the student takes and records a patient's history, then you go, yeah, I saw you do that, and then you can write the date that you saw them do it. There's a little box there if you want to write any comments at all, and then you can sign at the end there, or your initials, that would be acceptable too. The bit here relates to this page at the front. This page at the front here, it's for you to give an opinion on how well you think they did the particular little task that you saw. So you can say, yep, it was acceptable, or you can say it was good, very good, or you can say it was absolutely outstanding. Well, that was the best patient history I've ever seen in my life, and you can put outstanding there. Now, for the signature, technically anything above acceptable is a pass. So it's just a way for you to give them a little bit of feedback on how well their performance was. But, you know, if you write A for acceptable, well, that's acceptable. They'll still pass the qualification with that one too. The evidence glossary part is this section here, and the majority of stuff that they're going to do with you is going to be direct observation. So just write DO. So direct observation is I literally saw them take a patient history while I was with them, so I directly observed them doing it, and that's what I'm signing off here. There's a couple of others though, so you could do like a Q&A. So there could be a couple of learning outcomes where, yeah, you didn't really see them do it, but you've sat with them afterwards and you've had a little question and answer session with them, and the answers that they've given you make you feel like they really know what they're talking about. So you can say, well, I didn't directly observe them do this, however, we had a Q&A session about it, and I'm willing to sign to say we had a Q&A session and the student does really understand what this is. But like I say, if you just focus mostly on the direct observation stuff, that would be great, because that's the majority of this book. If the student needs to get evidence in other ways, then that's possibly something that we as the tutor team can pick up later. But the vast majority of stuff is going to be direct observation that you're doing here. And those two are written here. So the evidence glossary is you write direct observation because you saw them take the patient history. You write the score, you can say it was acceptable what they did, so you write the letter A for acceptable, and then you sign to say, yeah, I saw it. Now, you'll notice for every learning outcome here, there's actually 2 boxes, and that's just to give the student an opportunity to get to 2 testimonials. They don't have to get 2 testimonials though. So let's say they took a patient history once and you said, yeah, A, it was acceptable what you did. Further down the line, they've done a few more shifts, they've got a bit more proficient, they've done a patient history again, and now you've watched them do a patient history again, and you go, do you know what then? That was very good. So I'm willing to sign again on a different day, on a different occasion that I saw you do the same thing, but now I'm saying it's very good. So it's an opportunity for the student to say, I'm progressing here, I'm getting better at my job as I'm going along, and here's the proof that I can show you. However, if they only ever do it once, so because some of the ones are a little bit rarer and a bit more obscure, so if they only ever do it once and they just get the one signature to say that they did it, it's still acceptable as evidence. They don't have to get 2 signatures. It's just a nice way of showing that they have progressed through it. Now, last thing to note is the majority of them are in white. However, there's some that are written in grey, and these ones look like this. The ones that are written in grey, if they do it and you see them do it, great. Sign them off, say whether you thought it was acceptable, good, very good, and then put that you directly observed it and sign it. Great, and that's all you need to do with them, and that's it. The only difference with the grey ones is the vast majority of the grey ones are actual clinical skills. So it's to show that they can do these in a different way. So from the student's perspective, everything in white, they must get signed off in practice placement. So they have to keep going with their placement until everything in white is signed off. However, the stuff in grey, if they get signed off in placement, great, but if they don't get it signed off in placement, then we as the tutor team, we have an opportunity to perhaps say do it in like an artificial scenario or something like that. When you look at them, you'll see why, because for instance, something like resuscitate and neonate, well, you're doing 750 hours worth of placement, you're not necessarily going to be doing that. Something like apply a tourniquet. Well, some people get through the whole careers and never actually apply a tourniquet. So you might do it, you might not do it. But the grey ones, they might not necessarily get signed off. It's just, it'd be great if they could. So that's the reason why they're in two different colours. From your perspective as somebody who's working with them, you don't have to do anything different. If you see them do it, sign it. If you don't see them do it, well, then you don't. So from your perspective, it doesn't really matter. But that's why them things are two different colours. At the back, there is a learner diary. Now, the students have a e-portfolio, and they are encouraged to keep a diary on the e-portfolio. However, we've put this paper one in the back of their pad, and it's simply in case they're on shift and they want to write down something to keep in their memory, rather than wait until they get home and then log onto their computer and stuff. So that's why it's there. It's not mandatory for them to use this, it's just there if they do want to use it. There is a box at the bottom here if you want to write any notes about any events that have happened that day. So say you had a particularly interesting job, the student's written a little bit about it, and then you could say, you know, the student did really well, that sort of thing. You could put your notes there if you want to. But again, this is optional for the student because they do have the e-portfolio diary system that they'll be using as well. At the very back, there's little learning agreement templates as well. And again, this is optional if you want to use it or not. It's for if you are working all the time with one of the students, so you get a good relationship, you understand their needs, and so you're mentoring them really, and you're building a big relationship. What this allows you to do is you can have a conversation with the student, and they can say something like, do you know what, I'm really struggling to read ECGs, it's a big mystery for me. So you can write that at the top here, and then at the bottom you can say, right, so what our plan is the next time I'm working with you, we will look at the ECGs a bit more, and I'll make more of an effort to talk through what I'm actually doing with the ECGs. So it's little stuff like that, so you can sort of see where their gaps are and then make little plans on how you intend to try and help them with their gaps and problems. But again, it's optional. Some of you guys, you might be working with a student once and not see them again for a month, and if that's the case, you're not really going to use this because you're not going to have an opportunity to build that relationship. So it's really if you are seeing them all the time and helping them all the time that you would use this tool here. So yeah, that one's the optional bit. So that's the basis for the pad document that they've got. So your main role here is to sign it if you see them do it adequately. What I've said to the student though is it's their responsibility to know what's in this book, and it's their responsibility to go on shift and work and then go, do you know what, I think I did that. And it's their responsibility to get out the book and come to you and go, there's this written here, I think I did it, would you mind signing me off? It's not your responsibility to tell them to get the book out. It's not your responsibility to learn what's in the book. It's not your responsibility to take charge of this. It's their education, it's their responsibility to know what's in the book, and it's their responsibility to approach you and say, you know, will you sign me off for this? Because I think I did that then. And then you can have that conversation with them about whether you are willing or not willing to sign them off and your reasons why in that instance. But yeah, that's the sign-off book. for that one. The other book that they've got is a professional discussion logbook that they have too. Similar sort of theory, there's learning outcomes within their programme, and a great way of doing it is to have professional discussions with people like you, and then this is how we're recording that these discussions happened. So, first part of it is, again, quality things. So, the first time you meet the student, if you can write your name, signature again, and what your clinical grade is here. And again, you only have to do that once when you've met the student. You don't have to keep doing it. It's just a template signature thing, so we know who you are when you are signing the book off as we go through. This part here, it's a list of all the professional discussions that are in the book, and there's a box here. It's simply just so the student can tick it off, so they're making sure, like, right, I've done that one, I haven't done that one. So that's just like a little tick sheet for them to know what they're doing. The rest of the book you will find is the professional discussions. So at the very beginning of the book, I've made an example of one, so you get an idea about what it should sort of look like. So at the top here is the component it relates to, and then the outcome we're trying to make evidence for, and then under is the discussion we want you to have. So it'll either be consider this, find this out, discuss with the student X, Y, or Z. So this bit, the discuss bit, is the important bit really for you. Well, what do we need to talk about here? So as an example, this one is with your occupationally competent person, yourself, discuss and demonstrate the fire extinguishers that can be found in your workplace and what the different uses are for them all. So for this one, it's asking you to, at some point with the student, walk around your station, show them where the fire extinguishers are, look at the different colours of the fire extinguishers, and then have a conversation about what's the use for different colours, when do you use this one, when do you not use that one. And that's a discussion to have with the student. A professional discussion isn't a quiz, nor is it a lecture. It's a two-way conversation. So you tell the student what you know, the student can ask questions, the student can feed back what they've heard from you, what they've understood from what you've said. So it's a two-way process as a professional discussion. Once that event has occurred, as a bare minimum, you have that conversation with the student, and then you date it and sign it on this box. Now, if that's all you want to do, that's fine. So I appreciate you busy people. So you sign, say, yep, on this date I had this conversation and I'm willing to sign for it. And that's the end of it. There is a box above if you want to write comments. So you could write a comment, say, we walked around the station, we looked at the fire extinguishers, and now I feel that this student has a good grasp of where they are and how to use them. And you can leave it at that if you want. This next bit, the much larger box, is for the student to write in. So it's the student's responsibility to say, okay, I've had this discussion, so now I need to write out what was said in the professional discussion. So what have I learned from having the discussion? Now, it doesn't have to become like annotated verbatim. It just has to be the gist of what was said, what did you do, what did they learn, and that's what that box is for, but that's for them to do. And so as a bare minimum, you have the discussion and then you just sign that box at the end there. And just like with the other document, it's up to the student to know the discussions that they need to have and to approach you and ask you if you'd be willing to have this discussion with them. Some of them are longer than others, and some of them are more abstract than others. Some of them are about like person-centred care, duty of candour, and other things are a bit more like this, well, how do you use a radio? So you'll look at the discussions, and some are more straightforward than others, but it's whatever you feel comfortable with discussing with the student. And it doesn't have to be huge. It can literally be a 2-minute conversation. Really depends on what the discussion is, on how much there is actually to say about it, really. So it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be done in a classroom either. If you are driving somewhere and you're sitting together, have the discussion then. It doesn't have to be massively formalised. Just the fact that they've had a conversation with someone like you, who is a qualified, competent person, and you are willing to say, yeah, I had that conversation with that student, there was back and forth between us, and I'm now willing to sign to say I had that conversation. You're not signing to say that they're competent, you're just signing to corroborate that that conversation happened, and then the student does all the rest here. And that's literally all that book is in its entirety, is just a way to make evidence for some of the littler components that they've got. And that's it. That's the books that they've got. If you've got any questions at all, the student has the contact details for me. I'm the lead tutor on the programme, or the office, or they'll have my telephone number and my email as well. So feel free to get in touch with me directly. Don't feel like you have to go through Easter or anything. It's probably quicker if you just ask me directly too. But there is a lot of information in the front of the books as well. So have a look at that too. And apart from that, thank you. You're doing a great thing, helping them through their qualification, and taking the time out to do it. We were all there ourselves at some point, running around, trying to get people to sign off for things and help us with our homework and stuff. So thank you for helping them and getting through the process. So yeah, any questions, just let me know. Cheers.